Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your detailed forecast update for February 28th, 2025. A lot to get through today, including a detailed look at Tropical Cyclone Alfred, its future and its current lookings. We're also going to be talking about the future for Tropical Cyclone Alfred and its interactions with southeast Queensland and the northeast of New South Wales. We've got tropical weather offshore from Western Australia as well, with remnants of Tropical Cyclone Bianca, and we'll take a look at the long-range rainfall forecast for Queensland as well. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's go straight into things this morning with a look at Tropical Cyclone Alfred. You can see a gnarly tropical cyclone raging well offshore from Queensland right now. This is a powerful system right now. It was downgraded to Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone status by the Bureau of Meteorology overnight, but considering its recent improvements in satellite structure and the eyewall replacement cycle that it's managed to successfully undertake, it definitely looks like it's well and truly back up towards Category 4 status at this time. I've been watching the wind observations at Frederick Reef like a hawk, and you can see they're up to 76 kilometers an hour right now, starting to get quite blustery there out of the southeast as Tropical Cyclone Alfred approaches, and you can see Frederick Reef not even in the gale force wind zone right now, or the current projected gale force wind zone, and already well and truly gale force winds blowing there. So this tropical cyclone is likely quite a bit larger in terms of its gale force wind sway than we do initially expect here. Tropical Cyclone Alfred definitely putting on a show for us right now. It's an increasing in size and certainly now increasing with strength. This is a monster of a tropical cyclone here, certainly looking rough and raw, well offshore from Queensland, and certainly quite a scary thing to be waking up for if this system was going for the Queensland coast, which at least immediately does not look like the case anymore on the forecast. And we covered this in detail in yesterday's forecast update, but we're no longer expecting a landfall on the south central or the southeastern corner of Queensland, not at least for the next 7 days. The forecast does look a little bit interesting much later on, and chances are that the system does completely miss the Queensland coastline for a landfall, but we still do need to be talking about that in great detail, and I'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. But let's just jump into the immediate forecast for Tropical Cyclone Alfred. You can see remaining a powerful tropical cyclone well offshore from the Queensland coastline, expected to continue heading south throughout the next couple of hours before later on tonight we're going to see a turn towards the southeast towards Queensland. We could be seeing a very close pass towards Frederick Reef as well, which is quite exciting to me as a tracker. I'm expecting the cyclone to pass either over the wind observations and the meteorology station there, or a very close pass towards the south, which will put Frederick Reef in some of the strongest winds that this tropical cyclone has to offer. So if that happens, we'll get a very good gauge of how strong this tropical cyclone is, which is only good news, at least for the tracking community. And then this tropical cyclone through around lunchtime into later tomorrow night will then begin to turn away from the Queensland coastline. But you might be able to notice that this is looking a little bit closer towards Queensland than we were expecting yesterday, and that is true. This tropical cyclone has been moving faster south and faster towards Queensland than we have initially been expecting, and all major forecast models are now calling for this system to make a very, very close pass to Queensland. And I don't think I can stress that enough. This is expected to come very, very close to Queensland indeed, and you can see between forecast models here, gale force winds expected to develop between Rockhampton down towards Hervey Bay, and that includes coastal communities such as Yeppoon, Gladstone, Agnes Water, Bundaberg, and then down towards Hervey Bay, and all along the east coast of Fraser Island as well, especially into the northern tip of Fraser Island. So I'm very happy that I told these people to prepare for cyclonic conditions, and certainly if you haven't already, it is now time to prepare for cyclonic conditions from Saturday night through Sunday and into Monday morning if you live on the coast around Yeppoon, Gladstone, Agnes Water, and down towards Bundaberg. Rockhampton, you should be fine, and anywhere inland from those communities and those names just mentioned, you also should be fine. But preparing for gale force winds down to Hervey Bay and onto the eastern side of Fraser Island, about as far south as Noosa, is about as safe as you can be. Wind gusts shouldn't be anything stronger than about 100 kilometers an hour through these areas here, but you just never know. If this tropical cyclone wobbles a little bit closer to the coastline, the wind gusts could be substantially stronger than that. Also, keep in mind that this system will be on the way out on Sunday morning and into Sunday night. It will certainly be a weakening system by this time here, but still, considering the close proximity to the Queensland coastline and the fact that considering it is weakened, it will likely be increasing in size. So Tropical Cyclone Alfred here is certainly very likely now to present the central or the south central Queensland coastline with some significant wind gusts through Saturday night and into Sunday morning. The wind gusts should clear out by Sunday night into Monday morning as this tropical cyclone heads further offshore, and fingers crossed that that is the last thing that we hear from Tropical Cyclone Alfred. But unfortunately, the forecast models, they just don't know what to say here. We are expecting a strong high pressure system to develop in the Coral Sea, and there's really nothing that's going to be driving this tropical cyclone into or away from Queensland. You can actually see a bit of a low pressure trough extending across the Northern Territory into Queensland, which is kind of going to provide the perfect steering currents to funnel this cyclone in towards Queensland, developing by mid next week. And the forecast models really make the most of that. You can see a stalling or a very slow moving pattern expected through Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in the southern areas of the Coral Sea, and then back towards Queensland for a landfall on Fraser Island by the 9th of March. Now, I'm only saying this right now as kind of a look at what the future has materialize in terms of Tropical Cyclone Alfred here. I don't really for a second believe that this is going to happen. We're going to need to watch the forecast very closely over the next couple of days to kind of make sense of what's expected here. And my personal projection, which I'm just going to get to right now, is not only the fact that the tropical cyclone will pass very close to the Queensland coastline and provide them with some pretty significant wind gusts. I'm expecting peak wind gusts along the coastline, especially around Agnes Water and Gladstone, Turkey Beach, then down towards Bundaberg as well, or at least along the coastline around Bundaberg. And then on the northern extremities of Fraser Island up to Orchard Beach, I'm expecting peak wind gusts through there up to about 100, even up towards 125 kilometers an hour on Fraser Island. Now, I would not be surprised if severe weather warnings were issued. In fact, I am expecting a severe weather warning to be issued as this tropical cyclone makes its close pass through on Sunday morning. Conditions should clear off by Sunday evening, mind you, as well. So it's not exactly going to be a long-lasting period of significant winds, and certainly not going to feel like a cyclone, or it could feel like a tropical cyclone in some areas, but it's not going to feel like a significant tropical cyclone impact. In terms of rainfall, unfortunately, the good stuff, the really heavy rainfall that lots of south central and southeastern Queensland does need for the most part stays well offshore. And whilst it is going to be close enough now to provide areas such as Fraser Island and the northern areas of the Sunshine Coast north of Noosa and Maroochydore up through Gympie as we get further inland, with accumulations up to 100 millimetres through Sunday. For locations further north around Bundaberg, Gladstone, then through Rockhampton, and even up towards Yeppoon, there's really not a lot of rainfall expected through there, a couple of millimetres at best, and you can actually see 4-day rainfall accumulation starting from today. Nothing in the way of significant rainfall can be expected there, which is quite heartbreaking, I can imagine, for some of these people. So we can only hope that this tropical cyclone does kind of recurve towards the Queensland coastline without making a landfall, because that wouldn't be a very good situation at all, but providing a little bit of rainfall later on in the forecast period, certainly between the 7th and the 14th of March, which isn't entirely unlikely at this time, especially for the southeastern corner of Queensland. The forecast models for the last couple of days have been tipping a bit of a rainfall event in that corner of Queensland for a while, so I wouldn't be surprised if that did materialise, but unfortunately right now it's just going to be a bit of wind, not too much in the way of rainfall, and there's some big seas also expected throughout the course of Sunday, so stay safe and stay prepared. And if you haven't prepared for gale force winds between Rockhampton down to, I'm going to say Harvey Bay at this time, but certainly along Fraser Island as well, then it's certainly now time to be preparing for gale force winds, especially if you live in an exposed or coastal location. You'll be receiving some pretty significant wind gusts on Sunday as this tropical cyclone makes its passage through, but it's not going to be significant in the way that it's going to cut yourself off. So I really don't expect you to have to prepare cyclonic supplies such as canned food or weak supply of bottled water. I don't think that's necessary at this time. Just putting up the garden and moving the outdoor furniture inside or into a shed, or strapping it down just to be safe rather than to be sorry, because you do have some strong wind gusts on the cards. But yeah, certainly an interesting part of the forecast, that's for sure. I didn't really expect it to come this close to the Queensland coastline. I imagine a lot of people over on Facebook are going to jump on this with Tropical Cyclone Alfred now expected to turn towards Queensland for a landfall, and there'll be all of that crap being spewed over there. So again, only believe half of what you see on social media at times, and always make sure you cross-reference forecasts that you are unsure of. That goes for my forecasts as well, and the Bureau of Meteorology always have the most up-to-date and official information as well. Taking a look at the future for projections from the forecast models, I've kind of spoiled it, I guess, with that turn towards Queensland. You can see that happens much later on into the forecast period. It doesn't look overly likely right now, and considering that the GFS was the one that always had that bias for it, and now the GFS is calling for this system to kind of stall beyond Monday into the southern areas of the Coral Sea, and then, as you can see here, very slow moving as we play this forecast run through, and I'm tapping like a madman here, so you can see this tropical cyclone being very slow moving, and then finally getting us act together by the looks of things around the 8th of March and heading up towards New Caledonia, where it might even make a landfall there, and then later on into the forecast period being dragged down into the Tasman Sea north of Norfolk Island, and then down towards New Zealand. So again, that's a very higgledy-piggledy track right now from the GFS forecast model. The Icon forecast model is calling for the system to kind of circle around again, a bit like a circling shark, I guess, by the looks of things that later on into the forecast period, kind of calling for a drawing towards the Queensland coastline before maybe it gets dragged down across Lord Howe Island, but it certainly would be an impressive low-pressure system well offshore from Queensland if this does materialise here. And then the Access forecast model is calling for another landfall in the southeastern corner of Queensland here, in fact, pretty much right on top of the Gold Coast by the looks of things, sometime between Wednesday and then Thursday, and you can see a reasonably powerful tropical cyclone or extratropical cyclone expected there. Now, I've shown you all of these forecasts not as a this is what's going to happen and draw from it what you will. My hot take on this right now is that this tropical cyclone is going to do a bit of a stalling motion here north of Lord Howe Island, but I do reckon that eventually it is going to get dragged off towards the northeast or down towards the southeast. I don't really reckon it's going to get swung back towards Queensland, but at this time it's way too early to tell. We do not know what's going to be happening with this system here, and I doubt we're going to know what's going to happen until we get to towards Monday or Tuesday. Again, the good thing is with Tropical Cyclone Alfred is that even if it is going to, even though it has been such an indecisive system, we have had a couple of days notice before those land impacts were expected. So again, with this close pass to Queensland, we knew that that was going to happen at some point. And this system here, if it does go for the Queensland coastline, we will have at least 4 or 5 days notice if we do see a landfall, or those landfall chances start to rise here. And I don't really for a second believe that we're going to see a severe tropical cyclone, because that's what this is here, a severe tropical cyclone going into the Gold Coast or the Lismore area with wind gusts approaching 200 kilometers an hour. I mean, that would be cataclysmic, that's for sure. And sea temperatures right now wouldn't really support that. They're only 26, pushing 27 along the coastline, but as this system gets well out to sea here north of Lord Howe Island, sea temperatures here are about 25 degrees Celsius, and this is where this tropical cyclone is going to be hovering around for a good length of time. It will get destroyed in these sea temperatures here, and also notoriously high wind shear coming out of that high pressure system in the southern extremities of the Tasman Sea as well. So it definitely looks like this system will have a very hard time in an uphill battle, which is something that the forecast models haven't really been picking up on, as this system sits well offshore from Queensland, which is likely to happen next week. It's just that Queensland or New South Wales landfall that's been thrown around in the forecasting community. We're not really sure. So again, I would just like to stress this and really make a big point of it. We do not know if this system's going to go into towards Queensland later on in the forecast period. Those chances are there for a close pass or a landfall or a crossing of the coast at some point between Wednesday the 5th of March out towards Tuesday the 11th of March. The chances are there. It's not impossible at this time, but we just do not know, and I'm not going to be making any future comments on this tropical cyclone's passage until I know exactly what's going to be going on. I'm just going to be presenting the forecast to you as it is. Certainly wouldn't be a bad thing though in terms of rainfall if it went in towards the southeast corner of Queensland. For those reasons that I just mentioned, it would be a much weaker tropical low, but it still could house some impressive rainfall accumulations as it headed up towards Queensland. And again, if we take a look at the sea temperatures in a very similar fashion to how Townsville got so much rainfall in the last couple of months, is the sea temperatures along the coastline, they're nothing to be laughing at. 27 pushing 28 degrees Celsius here, so very warm indeed. That East Australian current is working overtime, and if a tropical low was to go for the Queensland coastline, some really significant evaporation could happen just before its landfall, or just before those showers did move across the coastline, which would present the chance of some pretty significant rainfall accumulations. And you can see that is reciprocated between the other forecast models as well. Not only is the eastern with that landfall calling for some significant rainfall accumulations up to around that half a metre type stuff, 500 millimetres, the axis is also calling for it, but when we see numbers like this outside of Coffs Harbour, we kind of really need to question it and scratch our heads, and I really think that the axis here is calling for a load of buoys. I think that this tropical cyclone will remain offshore, especially later on into the forecast period. Again, a southeast Queensland landfall, it's not unheard of, but it is incredibly rare, so we're talking 1 in a 50-year event, and with the way the weather has been going for the last couple of years, again, we can't be writing it off, and we can't be making forecasts based off precedents, because anything can happen, and that's proved itself right time and time again. But at this time, I'd be highly surprised if Tropical Cyclone Alfred doubled back and went for the Queensland coastline. It just doesn't look like that high pressure system is far north enough or strong enough to kind of steer it, because that's a lot of energy required to steer a full-blown tropical cyclone, a powerful one at that, into the southeast corner of Queensland. I really don't see that happening. But yeah, take a look at this system on satellite imagery. It looks impressive, that's for sure. Just to wrap things up on Tropical Cyclone Alfred, that eye really starting to clear itself out now after an eye wall replacement cycle, which is where the tropical cyclone takes its initial eye wall, builds another one, collapses the first one, and you can see that if we push this satellite view back a couple of hours, you might be able to see at the start of the 6-hour loop here that it had a little circle in here. So that was the initial eye wall that collapsed, and then it built another one here. And that's what tropical cyclones do every couple of hours. Every about 24 hours or so, they replace their eye wall, and it allows them to become stronger and fresher than they have been. It definitely looks like Tropical Cyclone Alfred now well on the way back up towards Category 4 status here. It looks very impressive on the visible satellite imagery. On the infrared, it's still got a little bit of work to do, but yeah, a menacing sight indeed, well offshore from Queensland. I was about to call it Tropical Cyclone Queensland. It's too early. I need another monster. This cyclone here, certainly a very menacing and a very gnarly look here, and I do hope that everybody is staying cool, calm, and collected along Queensland and staying safe. This is not a significant tropical cyclone impact in the making. It's certainly something that's going to give quite a few people a scare, especially for locations south of Rockhampton, down through Fraser Island and down in towards the northern areas of the Sunshine Coast. But if you're prepared for those gale force winds, there's nothing else that's going to be surprising from this tropical cyclone. And again, those landfall chances are in the toilet right now, below 1% at this time. But yeah, that basically does it for Queensland and the look at Tropical Cyclone Alfred. Let's just check back in on Tropical Cyclone Bianca, or the remnants of it, which is kind of this gaping black hole here, well offshore from Western Australia here. It's an ugly looking system, that's for sure. There's really nothing to be talking about here. The low pressure system has been completely killed off overnight, and those clouds now clearing out of the southwest corner of Western Australia, which, as I look out my window right now, is looking like going to be a really nice sunrise, that's for sure. So quite excited for that. Always in the remnants of these cloudy days, we get some beautiful sunrise the next day. So if you're watching from Perth and this video does come out before the sunrise, I do believe it is going to happen. Make sure you go outside. It looks like it's going to be a really beautiful morning as well. Very pleasant morning, that's for sure. Great day to get out on the boat, and certainly a great day to end the working week. Not too hot, not too cold, that's for sure. We do have a little bit of heat building as we get in towards the first week of March. Certainly looks like summer is going to return as we get in towards autumn, and you can see some of that heat building throughout the early parts of next week up in towards the northwest corner of Western Australia. Still looking at mid 40-degree days across much of the interior wheat belt, Pilbara, that's what it's called, Pilbara and Gascoyne. We're looking at mid 40s up there. In fact, could be up towards high 40s just offshore from, or just onshore from Exmouth and Onslow. Temperatures there up to about 47, 48 degrees Celsius as the low pressure system builds up there. And then temperatures on Thursday through Friday expected to be up into the high 30s of Perth. A little bit cooler for election day on Saturday, and then through Sunday and Monday, temperatures cooling off there and heading further towards the east. And you can see temperatures building across interior parts of Australia as we get through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And you can see those temperatures getting quite warm as we get towards next weekend as well for parts of South Australia. Temperatures up in towards the high 30s and early 40s expected there. And then by the looks of things, as we get towards Sunday, temperatures are going to start building as we get towards mid-March for parts of Victoria and South Australia as well. Highly dependent on the movement of Tropical Cyclone Alfred as well as we get later on into the forecast period, but it certainly could be looking at a bit of heat as we get towards the first or the second week of March into interior parts of New South Wales, South Australia and Victoria as well. Long-range rainfall forecast as well. Looking pretty boring. We were talking about the chance of some heavy falls up in towards the far northern areas of Queensland much later on in the forecast period after the 10th of March. And that still looks like it is on the cards. A few showers expected here and there, and a bit of a southeasterly onshore flow expected piping up from Thursday the 13th of March. That at least the long-range forecast is suggesting right now. But between other forecast models, it's still a little bit too early to tell. But certainly mid-March is when we're expecting that rainfall to begin to pipe up for far north Queensland. A couple of 100 millimetres expected here and there. And I do reckon from about the 10th of March onwards, we're going to see that rainfall pipe up for the Cassowary Coast and a bit later on for the Daintree Rainforest. So buckle up, it's now back on the forecast, this rainfall for far north Queensland. They've had plenty of time to dry out. In fact, if we take a look at the drought monitoring map up there, it certainly isn't looking like a very healthy picture. They need that rainfall quite badly, and you can see soil moisture values now really starting to slip away up across far north Queensland. As we get out towards the 8th of March as well, you can see anomalies now about 20 to 30 millimetres below the average. So very dry indeed, and you can see that drought really starting to creep up, that's for sure. Exceptional drought-like conditions expected up there. It's starting to get quite dusty up around far north Queensland, so this rainfall will be very welcome indeed. And whilst it's not much on the forecast right now, it certainly has the opportunity to build, and you can see it will, at least it is expected to build, and plenty of rainfall expected across parts of the Coral Sea as well. It certainly looks like as we get towards the mid to late March, a bit of a rainfall event is expected across far north Queensland, especially around that Cassowary Coast. So again, that's kind of my long-range projection at this time for Queensland. I would not be surprised if that did come in towards fruition. But yeah, in terms of other interesting stuff happening around Australia, a few good drops expected here and there across northwest and western Australia, but apart from that, Northern Territory is still experiencing its record latest start to the monsoon, and I believe it's one of the driest monsoons as well that they've had up there, so very disappointing rainfall there, and unfortunately nothing else on the forecast. But on that note, that is all that I have time for this morning. There'll be an afternoon update on Tropical Cyclone Alfred, of course, really going to go into detail and hammer home the forecast and the details on this tropical cyclone as it heads towards Queensland, because it should be making that turn by this afternoon, especially in towards late this afternoon as well. Check out the Facebook page and become a channel sponsor today. Supporting the channel is the only way to financially help the CyclonesOZ channel, and again, all support is very much appreciated as well. So again, thank you so much for watching the video to this point. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.